Thank you so much, Ocean. I hope you all hear me well. Yes, I get thumbs up. Perfect. I'm just, yeah, so happy to be joining you. And I think the first thing I want to say, just thank you for having me here in this conference, because just the Irish context and the frameworks that you use and you work with are so much close to my heart, because these are one of the first things I started studying myself when I was still a student representative back in Armenia. So just awesome to be here. Maybe, of course, I would be more excited to visit you in person in Dublin, but I will try to spend some part of my evening today maybe just looking, doing virtual tours over Dublin, reading about the Trinity College Library, and then gasping at your beautiful landscapes. But for now, my mission is indeed to talk with you about student partnership in higher education. When I was preparing for this talk, I was thinking, what story should I be telling you to kind of bring a perspective on student partnership? Should I start from the medieval times of the Bologna University, where students used to be rectors, they would hire or reject their teachers? Or should I talk about the struggle of the Czech students during the World War II that we celebrated a week ago, the 17th of November? These are, of course, great and very inspiring stories, because students as young veins of the societies come and bring changes, not only for themselves, but for all generations that come to follow them. And we often acknowledge that universities are having a massive impact on students, but I believe that students are having a huge impact on their universities too. And this is something that we need to put in a perspective when we discuss student partnership in higher education. I think to achieve student partnership, we should start looking at the basic conditions that are enabling environment for student representation. And I think part of the framework that you were referring to, Ocean, very well describes this enablers that I want to mention now. So several type of enablers that I can mention are, for example, the institution's adherence to fundamental democratic principles, to democracy. Another enabler is clear and extensive formal provisions defining the terms of student participation for all levels and domains of institutional governance. Another enabler is full and continuous recognition of student representation as free and independent with respect to aims and decisions and activities of the student body. Then another enabler is the long-term institutional support and resources for a sustainable student representation, and of course, continuous training for student representatives. And obviously, political will that should come from decision makers to have actual and not just only formal continuous student involvement. I also want to focus on an aspect of conception of students by higher education institutions, because this is important when we want to understand student partnership. Universities often have a conception of students in the following different roles. They see students as members of the academic community. They might see students as a constituency or stakeholders group. They can see students as citizens and the future elite. And they often see students as consumers, clients, or users. These different conceptions of students have direct repercussions to the student and higher education governance relations. And this affects formal and informal provisions for student participation, as well as the other basic conditions for an enabling environment for student partnership. Therefore, we need changes in the environment to change the conception of students to achieve a better partnership within higher education. And then going to What do we understand by partnership? Partnership implies shared responsibilities in each step of the institutional decision-making process, and this starts from very basic things like agenda setting, drafting, decision-making, implementation and monitoring of institutional decisions, and grows more and more. It is the highest form of participation for students, so it's not just participation, but it goes beyond to achieve partnership. And at this level, representative student bodies and the university administration cooperate closely and broadly while respecting the independence of student representation. And student representatives participate in decision-making bodies typically with full voting rights. At least this is what we observe to happen when we talk about student partnership on in different European contexts. And going beyond to embedding student partnership starts from sometimes, I would say, intentionally forgetting any hierarchical association with the word student. If those who want to partner with students believe that their responsibility is to simply act in the best interest of students, disregarding what those students actually believe their interests are, then students will really have difficulties to partner. Students partnership and their capabilities to influence the learning process should not be limited by the expectations as to their role or the behavior inherent in given cultural frames. And I know that in the United Kingdom and in Ireland, you have, I would say, one of the most developed policies and institutional practices in student-centered learning, which is explicitly linked, obviously, to student engagement and is core to student partnership. And as I said, I know this not just from hearing, but I have been learning about these frameworks when I was still a student representative in Armenia. And back then, when I read all of this and met very awesome Irish colleagues, I just gasped that it is possible to do extensive amount of work to create such a partnership. In my university, the type of partnership that I have experienced was very limited, often to tokenistic meeting rooms or some very tough arguments for the student rights, in classrooms or in corridors. And only at the European level, I would say, I started really experiencing how and what student partnership can look like. And I very much hope that you will continue embedding this further in Ireland, and this will be transposed to other European countries as well, because many other countries are just at the earlier stage of looking into student-centered approaches to education. I also firmly believe that this type of partnership is a reflection of the liberal values of modern societies, according to which agentic individuals are central to social and economic progress. Political democracy, open market economies, cultural freedom are all built around capabilities of empowered individuals. And I surely believe that higher education is expected to prepare students to become agentic individuals, both through learning the theory at the university, but as well as practicing the theory through student partnership that they can build in higher education institution. And finally, I want to say that I feel very honored to speak at this session together with Sjur Bergen, who will speak right after me, a very honorable friend for me today. His friendship to me, and not only to me, but also to a lot of other student representatives, is a successful story of student partnership. I remember the very first time I met him at a coffee break of a meeting in Council of Europe building back in Strasbourg. It was one of the very first events that I was attending as a freshly elected executive committee member of the European Students' Union. Sjur Bergen, the head of the Department of Education at the Council of Europe, approached me during this coffee break, mentioned his name, and said that it's nice to meet me. And of course, I knew his name, I knew his title, I have heard about him, I have read different things about him, and I was just amazed that he could just approach me and introduce and say hi. But today I know that Sjur came to me to greet me because partnership doesn't start with the titles and with the hierarchy, but partnership starts when persons who are willing to know each other are also willing to just partner with each other beyond the titles. That is my successful story of student partnership. And if we believe that a successful story is made out of is making a successful society where people can pursue the goals important to their own lives through individual or collective action, then I think higher education, which enables and strengthens students' partnership, is a firm condition to build a successful story and obviously a successful society. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope that the successful society you are building in Ireland really gets to be better and better through the partnership you build in higher education institutions, and I look forward to our discussion.